The wind carried dust across the lonely town of Dusty Creek, a settlement so small it wasn't even marked on most maps. The creak of wooden signs, the groan of old doors, and the occasional bark of a stray dog were the only sounds most days. Life here was hard, and every face wore the weight of survival. Among them lived a man named Elias Boone. He was a cowboy who had once been strong, fierce, and proud. But now he was just a shadow of the man he used to be. His beard had turned gray, his hat was weathered and bent, and his back carried the heaviness of grief more than age. Elias had known love once. Years back, his wife Anna and their little boy Jacob had filled his small wooden house with laughter. They had sat by the fireplace together, Anna sewing while Jacob played with a carved wooden horse his father had whittled. But one winter, fever swept through Dusty Creek like a storm no man could fight. It took Jacob first, and Anna only days later. Elias buried them on a hill just outside town, beneath a lone mesquite tree. Since then, he had lived like a ghost, breathing, eating, moving, but never living. His only companion was Rusty, an old chestnut horse that had once carried Anna and Jacob on short rides through the prairie. Rusty was nearly as broken and tired as Elias, but the two of them still kept each other standing. Elias had one rule now: don't get close to anyone. The world took everything he loved once. He wasn't going to let it do that again. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and turned the sky into fire, Elias sat outside the saloon with a glass of water. He no longer drank whiskey, he'd sworn it off the day he buried Anna. That's when he saw her. A woman, young but worn down by life, stumbled into town carrying a small bundle in her arms. Her dress was torn, her face covered in dust, and her eyes held a look Elias recognized too well: loss, fear, and hunger. The bundle moved, and from it peeked a little girl no older than 6, thin and pale, clutching her mother's shoulder. The woman whispered to the townsfolk she passed, asking for help, but they turned away. Dusty Creek wasn't cruel, but it was poor. People barely had enough for themselves. The woman finally reached Elias. She looked into his tired eyes and said, her voice breaking, "Mister, can you help us? She hasn't eaten in 2 days." Elias froze. For a long moment, he just stared at them. The girl looked at him, her lips trembling, her big brown eyes filled with tears. She was too exhausted to cry. Something cracked inside Elias. Memories of Jacob's small face flooded back. Without a word, he stood, took her hand, and led them to his cabin at the edge of town. Elias lit the old iron stove and cooked what little he had, cornbread and beans. He poured water into a tin cup and gave it to the girl. The woman introduced herself as Clara, and the girl as May. Clara told him how her husband had fallen in with a gang of outlaws. They robbed, cheated, and killed. When Clara begged him to leave that life, he beat her and set fire to their home. She fled with May, walking for days through dust and heat. Elias listened, though words did not come easy to him. When May finally smiled, her belly full for the first time in days, Elias felt something stir inside, a feeling he had buried long ago. That night, after Clara and May slept on his bed, Elias sat by the fire, staring at the flames. He whispered to the empty room, "Anna. Jacob, maybe God finally sent me a reason to breathe again." Days turned into weeks. Clara cooked, cleaned, and mended Elias's old clothes. May followed him everywhere, into the barn, to the well, even when he went to mend the fences on the edge of his land. At first, Elias kept his heart locked. He told himself it was only temporary. But each time May called him Pa by mistake, a piece of his broken soul healed. The townsfolk noticed the change. Elias Boone, once silent and bitter, now laughed softly, shared meals with Clara, and even played his old harmonica at night for May, who danced clumsily in the dust. People whispered, "Boone's got a family again." For Elias, it felt almost like redemption. But peace in the West never lasted. One morning, as Elias saddled Rusty, he saw dust rising on the horizon. 6 riders approached, their black hats pulled low, rifles strapped to their backs. Clara turned pale. "It's them," she whispered. "Her husband's gang." They rode into Dusty Creek, spitting tobacco and laughing cruelly. Their leader dismounted, tall and scarred, his boots clinking against the wooden boards of the saloon porch. He shouted for all to hear. "We're looking for a woman and a brat. She belongs to me. Hand her over, or this town burns." Fear spread through the streets. Dusty Creek had no sheriff worth mentioning, and no one wanted to risk their life for strangers. Elias stepped forward. His voice, rough with years of silence, cut through the crowd. "You want them? You'll have to go through me first." The gang laughed. The leader sneered. "Old man, you can barely hold a gun." Elias looked back at Clara and May. He saw the fear in their eyes, and the trust. For the first time in years, his purpose was clear. He loaded his revolver. "Try me." The next morning, the town gathered at the edge of the prairie. The gang faced Elias and Rusty, the old horse standing tall one last time. The leader spat. "This ain't your fight, Boone. Step aside." But Elias raised his revolver. Rusty pawed the ground, as if ready to charge into hell itself. The air grew heavy. Then the first shot rang out. Elias fired, his hand steady despite the years. One outlaw fell. Another lunged forward, only to be struck down by Elias's second bullet. The gang fired back. Bullets tore the dust, splintered wood, and grazed Elias's arm. Still, he stood firm. Rusty carried him forward, straight into the firestorm. The townsfolk watched, frozen, until something inside them snapped. Inspired by Elias's courage, they grabbed rifles, pitchforks, whatever they had, and joined the fight. By the time the smoke cleared, 3 outlaws lay dead, 2 wounded, and the leader fled, bleeding into the desert. But Elias lay on the ground, his chest bleeding. Rusty collapsed beside him. Clara rushed to his side, tears streaking her face. May knelt beside him, clutching his hand. "Pa, don't leave us. Please." Elias coughed, blood on his lips, but he smiled. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to fight again." He placed his trembling hand on May's cheek. "I lost one child, maybe God gave me another." Clara sobbed, holding his other hand. "You saved us, Elias. We'll never forget." With his last breath, Elias whispered. "Keep her safe, Clara. And when you hear the wind, that'll be me." Playin' the last song of Dusty Creek. His eyes closed. Rusty, as if knowing his master was gone, laid his head beside Elias and let out one final breath. Together, man and horse crossed into the quiet. Dusty Creek buried Elias Boone and Rusty beneath the lone mesquite tree, where Anna and Jacob already rested. Clara and May stood there every evening, placing wildflowers at his grave. The town never forgot what he did. They told stories of the day an old cowboy stood against 6 men alone, and how his courage gave them back their pride. Years later, May would tell her children. "There was a man who once saved us. He wasn't my blood, but he was my father all the same. And every time the wind sings through the trees, I hear his harmonica. I hear the last song of Dusty Creek."